Hello everybody, it's Maureen from Bling on the Chaos, and I'm back with part 2 of the Ogee Rhinestone template tutorial. So here we have our tumbler that has the template already added on. You can see that we've cut out the pieces. This is all in part 1 if you'd like to follow along. You can see I've left on the tape that I use to tape off the bottom and the tops when I'm prepping the tumbler, and I like to keep that so that my stones have a little bit of a ledge to sit on. I've got my black stones in a number of sizes here, which I'll talk about in a little bit, in my trays, and I'm ready to start blinging. My preferred tool for applying rhinestones is the Crystal Kubotan. I love this, that it's a retractable type pen, and the wax is very tacky, so it allows me to quickly pick up stones. So here I'm just applying a little bit of liquid fusion from my precision tip bottle, and just a light squeeze, and applying just a small area where I will begin blinging, only on top of the template line. I do prefer to just start with the outlines and then I'll fill in with colors after. Later on in the video, I will switch back to doing the colored ombre, but I'm just going to be using this black outline for this tutorial section. So the stone size that I'm using is SS20s, SS16, and SS10. And what I found with this template, in the measurements that I have provided in the download, is that where the two lines come together, where they form the V, I put in SS20, the largest stone. It's the largest area of the template, the thickest line. It fits an SS20 very well. And then right after the SS20, I will put an SS16. So the SS16 then lends itself to a little bit more narrower width of the template. And then I will follow that with a couple of SS10s. So you can see I'm just putting in the SS10s, SS16, and then the SS20s here. A little bit more adhesive on the next section. I put my SS20 there, an SS16, and then I'm following the middle section, filling it in with the SS10s. Same here, SS10s going along, SS16 in, a little bit of shuffling around, and I'll just continue to do this, filling in the lines as we go. Again, that SS20 where the lines meet, and then an SS16 on either side of that SS20, and then filling in the middle with SS10s. Continue with this pattern all the way around the cup, completing the outline template. Once you're finished, we will then start the next outline. For these, I like to use acrylic pens. I don't always, but for small detailed work, instead of base painting with a regular paintbrush, I will use an acrylic pen. So these I just got off of Amazon. I really like them. There's a ton of colors that it comes with, and it's super easy to paint with. So I'm just carefully painting around the stones, creating a little bit of an outline that I'll be putting my next color on. Being careful not to get any of the paint on the black stones, but if I do, I will just take a Q-tip with a little bit of alcohol and wipe it off. I want to make sure that you clean off any paint on the stones before you put adhesive down, because once your glue is on and it gets on top of the paint, it will not come off. Next, you'll see that I've finished filling in all of the lines, and I've started adding my gold stones that are going to outline the black. I'm using Golden Shadow SS6 for this size. Same process, line it with some liquid fusion glue and then fill in with your stones on top. I always like to do like a little bit of a double patting motion when I add my stones. You can see I'll go back in after and just do a little pat on top just to make sure that they are not sitting on top of each other, they're not resting on top of another stone, that their spacing is equal. Sometimes when you get to the end of a line, you don't have quite enough space to add another stone. So doing this, you'll see I can maneuver the stones around to adjust my spacing and allow me to fill in any of the gaps that I might be left with. So just keep working in this pattern until you have all of your outlines done. I find this process very soothing. It's almost like coloring. A little bit of glue, just keep going. Notice that I'm working in small sections at a time. I'm not getting too far ahead of myself with my adhesive. I don't want the adhesive to start to dry on me and form a bit of a skin on the top. I want the adhesive to be as fresh as possible, so I'd much rather work in smaller sections than have adhesive that has started to dry by the time I get to the point where I would need to add a stone on top. So keep working in this way. Outline all of your template, whatever color you have chosen. In this case, I've chosen black and I'm outlining in golden shadow. And we will be right back with the colored ombre. So here's the original one that I came up with. I've got some sections on the back here that have been base painted. I know I am not an artist. I cannot paint for the life of me, so no judging here, but I'm not worried because this paint will actually be hidden by the stones. The stones are going to sit on top of the paint. The base paint is really only for myself and to also just hide any little gaps that might be visible once I start doing my scattered method. So the stone colors that I'm using are all AB coated, and that means Aurora Borealis coating, or almost like what the night sky looks like when you're looking at the northern lights or Aurora Borealis. And I'm applying them in the kind of a rainbow pattern. So here I'm starting with the Sapphire AB stone. And the style of application I'm using is called the scattered method. And the scattered method is using a variety of sizes of stones to fill in the pattern. So the fill pattern has all sorts of different style or sizes of stones. And when I do an ombre, I like to have all of my colors set before me. And I follow the base paint color that I have laid down on my tumbler. When I begin an ombre, I will start with the first color. And I'll always have the second color in a tray right beside it. And I like to alternate between the two. So I will pick up my main color or my first color and lay down a fair amount of those. And then I will begin to just slowly pick up one or occasionally pick up one or two of the other transition color. I try to not, when I'm first doing an ombre, I try not to put two of the second color side by side in almost like the first row. Even though we're doing the scattered method, there isn't rows, but there's sections that could be seen as rows. And then as I work further up, I will pick up less and less of the first color and more of the second color. So here you can see that I've now moved away from using more of the sapphire and picking up more of this aqua AB color. And as I work my way up, I will look beside in the pattern beside this section beside where I'm working and note that the next color that I'm going to be picking up is that Peridot AB color. So I'll be moving the Sapphire AB stones out of the way, and I will bring in the Peridot AB to start that transition. So I'm just picking up alternating sizes of stones. It's a little bit of a game of Tetris to try and find the perfect size, but with practice you'll be able to recognize the size of stone that will fit in the area that you're working on. I do move the tumbler around just to make sure that it's going to match the pattern adjacent to it. So you can see here that I notice that I need to start adding in that Peridot just to follow the pattern of the section that I completed adjacent to it. So picking up more of the aqua color and the occasional Peridot to start blending that ombre. One thing I also like to think about while I'm applying my scattered method is I try, and I don't always succeed, just depends on the size, but I do try to not have the same size stone side by side. Sometimes, you know, one or two beside each other is fine, but when I find the pattern starts to look a little bit odd if you have 3 or 4 stones of the same size side by side. So here I just noticed that I wanted it to be a little bit more blended, so I'm just getting my tweezers and I'm going to just lift out a couple of those aqua stones and replace with a Sapphire AB, just so that it looks a little bit more blended. Just looked a little bit heavy with the aqua on that one side. It just wasn't balanced. And that's okay. You might find that once you start applying stones, your ombre isn't flowing or doesn't blend as well as you had hoped, and you can easily just pick those stones out. Certainly not at the point right now where it's cured. It's one of the benefits of using adhesive like liquid fusion. It takes a full 5 to 7 days to cure hard, and then during that time it's easier to pick any stones out if you want to change them or replace them. So here I'm now bringing in the light peach AB, knowing that I need to start bringing those color stones in for my ombre. Just working through the scattered method here. I tried to make sure that it's somewhat congruent to the patterns adjacent to this section that I'm working on. So the previous ones that I have already filled, I try to just keep with the same level of where the colors stones begin and end. Just had a little bit of difficulty getting the right size stone in that spot. keep going. You're almost done this section. Gets a little bit more difficult as you near the end of the section and your working area gets a little bit smaller, to be a little bit more picky about the size of stones. Again, it's okay to put a stone down, and if it doesn't fit, take it out, use a different size. Sometimes it takes a little bit of finessing to get them to fit properly, but whatever you do, don't try to push or force a stone in. What can happen is that the stone won't lay flat, or if it does, it might actually push a stone that's further down and one that you've already placed. It might actually push that one out of place and not lay flat, and then you're more susceptible to losing that stone later on. So don't force. You might just have to, like say, you might have to just play around with it, practice moving them around. You can see here that I'm shuffling them around, lifting ones out that don't work, and that's okay. That's why there's 1,440 stones in a bag. You've got lots to play with here. So you can see that as we've neared the end, my horrible paint job that I had initially laid down as my base coat, you can't see it anymore. It's gone. So it's been filled in with these beautiful stones. So if you're like me and can't paint, have no fear. Nobody will ever know. I'm almost finished this section here. Just a few more stones to place. And then once I'm finished this section, I will move over and begin the next section with the color that I just finished with, which is the Peach AB. So here you can see I'm just going around tapping down on those stones to make sure that I didn't push any out from laying flat. And there we go. One section is now done. So I'm going to move over to the next, and following my pattern of colors adjacent, I will continue with the rainbow pattern. And there we are, folks. Thank you so much for joining in part 2. Stay tuned for part 3, where I'm going to cover curing, cleaning, and repairing of your rhinestone tumbler.